All right, session 5. Hard to believe.
Wow.
It's just chipping away here, and then I'll miss y'all so bad.
It'll be holidays. You get us out of here and then you don't have holidays.
There we go. All right. Now, the things I want to do, we're covering several things today. I think I want to start with insulin and diabetes, and some things are changing now. Not the illness. The illness is still as peculiar as anything ever was. AIDS they say, and all these other things, but nothing is more peculiar to me than diabetes, because they say, now I'm going to tell you the different things, that it's hereditary, that you and I have a cell like this, and it has 4, if I had a blackboard, 4 chambers. So here's the cell with opening, 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 opening. And that's a wonderful cell. And sugar, insulin pushes sugar on in, and the sugar is our fuel. And I think I told you, it's almost like they say sugar is coal and the shovel is insulin, and our muscles are the cell, and it's putting that insulin puts the coal into our cells. They say it's hereditary that your cells don't have 4, that they have just 2. And that serves us fine when we're little and young and running and eating heavy sweets and drinking Cokes. Our exercise and all, nobody knows, heart, you're going to be one of those. It's going to be type 2 because your lifestyle is it's going to change. And so pubescence comes, and usually right after that, when we get a little more sedentary, and I'm talking type 2, because type 1, type 1, mostly the medical community deals with type 2, because type 1 is just you're not putting out enough insulin, either your islets aren't working, insulin's given, and your history. I mean, you just go on with your life taking insulin. And that's type 1, and I'm sorry it happened, but there's not much we're going to be able. We can manipulate with type 2, kind of. So type 2 is the one that we have the cells. You were hereditarily had the type 2 cells, and you say, well, I'm doomed. But you're really not. You just got to wait to take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. And that means watch how much sugar you take in, because I read just this week that pancreas is probably putting out insulin. It's just that when you've got the 2 chambers, it can't handle it as well, and what it does, it just kind of closes up and said, I give up. You've overpowered me. I can't stand it, so I'm quitting. And that's your insulin resistance. And it just quits on us. Now, it's not that it'll never wake up and help us again. If we're nice to it, it'll become our friend again. Mm-hmm. But we have to be nice, or that resistance keeps on. Opens up a little, lets a little go in, or we be thin rail. So, and most diabetics are fleshy. So it lets some in, obviously. It's just not enough to keep us fit and good and in great shape and low blood sugar. What do we do about it? That's the big
thing.
Give
him a pill today.
Huh?
Today we give him a pill.
Do what?
Medication, a pill.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure.
Drugs fix everything.
In America.
Yeah.
You're in America. Pills will work. And it's the goal of dietitians and nurse dietitians especially to not do exactly what Connie's saying, to try to work it and really, and again, type 2, when we've got a little bit of years on us, you may be teenager, you may be 20, 30, but the point is so often type 2 comes down on us when we are fleshy. Well, hi, Kay. And it's so. I've got so much I want to say at once because and I don't even know what I'm talking about, except I've got so many books on it because I wish I understood it, and surely somebody could come by and win a Nobel Prize for figuring this disease out, and they try to. So the beautiful thing about some of the drugs, especially, let's go to your briefs. Okay, we know what insulin does. We've already talked about that. We've got the kinds that start immediately. Some of them wait a little while and start. And we know about that. Okay, I'm not through with insulins. Go in your briefs and go to medication. Page 16 is where it starts. But I want you to keep it open and look at the top of 17. Well, the first drug that really came out that we thought was going to be, the world thought was going to be great for diabetics, was the second one on page 17 by Etta. And what it does, administer sub-Q, a GI hormone used to slow GI absorption of food, thus decreasing carbohydrate absorption, thus blood sugar level. And it was such a clever idea, and it was serendipitously found. They noticed the Hula monster in out west. It looks kind of like a iguana, and scientists watched it, and it could eat and not eat again for 6 months, 6 weeks, or something. I remember the 6. It was a long period of time it never ate, and its blood sugar stayed good. So they thought something's going on here. So they took the saliva of the Hula monster, and that was the origin of Byetta. It's a GI hormone that slows up absorption. So if it slows up absorption, the sugar doesn't just get so much at the cell. Okay, I was saying hereditarily they say a cell has 2 chambers for if you have a compensity to diabetes 2. You and I, if we don't have it, we have 4 chambers, so we handle it fine. But if we take too much sugar in, it just almost backlogs at the cell, and the cell quits, which is insulin resistance. And somebody found out that the saliva of the Hula monster has that GI hormone that if we take it, it will slow absorb, and then if it slow absorbs, it doesn't all crowd at the gate. It's a supply and demand become more equal. Isn't that clever? Mm-hmm. And so it was a great thing to discover. So Byetta was probably the first. And then we went to Victosa, go to V. And Byetta was, nobody does Byetta now if they're smart, because you have to do it before your meal, a shot. It's a shot. Now, I guess if somebody's doing great on it, they probably are still on it. But they progressed, and they went to Victosa on 21, second from the bottom. Victosa, administer sub-Q once daily. Better than the Byetta, which was before every meal. Now, we once daily, and it can be used in place of Byetta for glycemic control. So it's doing the same thing. And then the third progression was back on 17, at the top of the page, Bydureon. Once a week. Is that fabulous? Once a week, the extended form of Byetta. Now, you say, well, what about Trulicity? Or the TV is loaded with new diabetic drugs. I can't even keep up with them. And I talked to a dietitian this week. She said I can't even keep up with them. There's so many new ones. But basically, that's what they're about. They're not an insulin. They're a GI hormone. Now some, no, they're not. I ain't even studied them. They're coming across the TV so fast. Now I heard somebody said Have y'all heard that Truicity? Something like that. They say it's worked real well. I do not know how it works. I don't know whether it stimulates. Now, some of our PO medicines stimulate the pancreas to just push a little harder, to put out more insulin. I had a friend who is a diabetic, and he's got his doctorate in nursing, and his area is diabetes. He said I know it was hereditary, I got that, but he said when I was young, I my activity, my sugar, it leveled, and then adolescence happened, and the Cokes and all didn't equal my exercise, and he says he thinks the pancreas has a period. Now you can take it or leave it. I'm sure he thinks he has some backing to say it, that the pancreas begins to deteriorate some because it's working so hard. And the pancreas doesn't like to work real hard. You know, pancreatitis, that's because we take in so much sugar and fat, and it's working 24/7. It doesn't like to, and it becomes inflamed. And he thinks that lifestyle, before you become really resistant to insulin, that your the islets of Langerhans and the pancreas kind of deteriorate a little bit, and that certainly could be true. Now, so what to do about it? I was telling a diabetic this week, lose weight. Just lose weight if you're a diabetic. I bet it'll reverse. Now, I can't prove that, but I do know people who say when they lost weight, they got off their medicines. Now, do they have a propensity? Of course, because they've got the cell with the two things. They've just got.
You can never go back to eating like you were. Once you lose that weight, you better stay there. I have a lot of insulin diabetic issues, and I have since I was 35.
And you call yourself a diabetic?
Not anymore.
Okay.
I got my A1C down.
Started with type 2?
Yes. I was first diagnosed with hyperinsulinemia, insulin resistance with hyperinsulinemia. I had enough insulin in me for 44 people. And so insulin's the fat storing hormone, so I was really heavy at that point. I have lost over 15 years. It takes me forever because my insulin's still not normal. And so I hold fat better than anybody. But I watch my diet. And when my A1C was 8.9.
And we want a 6, or as you said, they'd love a little around 5.
They're trying to get me to 5.4, and I'm going, you guys, I'm not eating much now as it is.
Yeah.
And that's what my doctor said. She said, you're really watching your diet, but I can't lose weight, and that's because of the insulin. And so
now, why is the organ's just gone haywire?
Yes.
Yeah. It's just a sensitive organ. People don't realize it is. It really is. And maybe we just don't know enough about it.
Yeah.
Y'all know it's as big as our fist. And the islets, the little B cells are islands. And they're all over it. And they're secreting the insulin. The rest of the organ is your digestive enzymes. They are apples and oranges, an apartment house with some rooms. They don't even join each other. They don't even speak in the hall. They are separate organs. And so here's 2 organs that are one, and one pours insulin into the bloodstream, and the rest of it pours it into the duct of the GI to digest our foods. So it's such a peculiar, but so sensitive, because as I said, if you drink and get on the binge, it doesn't like that because it's having to work so hard and becomes inflamed. And incidentally, for pancreatitis, we talked about it last week, resting it is the best thing. Fluids, just not making it have to work on sugar and fat. Because we talked about amylase last week. And now, throw in anything new you've learned, Lori, or anybody, because they are coming up with some interesting things. It still boils down to resistance and the cells backing up sugar, which is resistant to getting in there. Why? Nobody knows why the pancreas decides to become resistant.
I've had some doctors tell me, I wanted to ask if they told you that they think it's viral.
Yeah.
Some of them do.
Yeah.
It could be viral. My doctor says she really thinks it's a big gut issue. She said, you know, the big kick is everything starts in the gut. She said, I
That's a
really
good
believe
point.
that because these hormones that are working in the GI tract too.
That's an interesting thing, yeah. And I've heard too, Connie, that a virus happened and injured it
Right.
and became resistant, or
Right.
what our cells, I don't know. Now, how to handle it, and Lori may be able to tell some too, but I have a nurse friend says, why do you always want to talk carbohydrates with diabetes? And I said, because I think it's the easiest way to watch. Because nobody has any food, not really. I get, well, yeah, okay. Get in the habit of, even if you're not diabetic, I think it's a good habit to twist your hand and look at the list. And I don't ask you to look at a lot of it, but there's about 2 or 3 things. And you want you to know that a carb serving is 15 grams. And if you're diabetic, a lot of times, and I'm telling anybody because I think all of us need to watch our diet as a diabetic does. If you were diabetic, they'd probably send you to a dietitian who has you fill out papers, and the dietitian will come up with how many carbs you need. And if it's a man that is kind of active, that dietitian would probably say you can have 4 15s for breakfast, lunch, supper, with 1 15 in the middle of the morning and 1 15 in the middle of the afternoon. So 4, 4, 4 is 12, 13, 14. You can have 14 carb servings. Now if you want them all in one, then you don't get anything else the rest of the day. But you can keep women that are just regular active, the dietitian, and I'm using general, they would need you to fill out a form, but if you want to know what you might go by, you might go by 2, 2, 2, 1 snack, 1 mid-afternoon. So, you know, fat is not frowned upon. And protein is not really frowned upon. They say you don't want to eat too much protein. It's pretty hard on the body, but I mean, it's wonderful for the body, but too much puts it.
Too much can also affect your blood sugar.
Oh, I didn't realize that, really.
I didn't either. I learned the hard way on that.
Really? This friend of mine called me yesterday. Her children are living with her for a little while, and she said, I just have to whisper. She fixes 18 eggs a morning for the 3 children, and not a piece of bread or toast or anything. And she said the children are hungry by 9 o'clock in the morning. Well, of course they are. It's straight protein. It's no fat. It's no carbs. And they're just getting protein. Protein doesn't stay with you.
Their kids? Oh, yeah. No wonder they're starving.
I know it. Nothing else. She was whispering to tell me what. I mean, she can't really intervene because
Well, it's her house. She can.
Yeah, I know. But they're supposed to be doing her a favor by taking care of her. Anyway, so let's say, but now say for breakfast, it's look at the carbs only. You say, well, now I think fat. For the most part, fat's going to work out okay for you, and we talked about that last week. But the carbs, and see, protein is going to work for you for the most part, unless you just overwhelm.
Yeah, it's
and
a lot.
yeah, and you probably won't. But you think now, a piece of fruit is going to be a carb, and I'm sorry that it is, but it is. They say the Caribbean tropical are the worst. Bananas and but berries are not. Berries are. The dietitian I know said berries just chase those carbs, taking care of them. Berries are expensive, but any berry is good. Is so much better. Banana, not so good. You're getting some potassium, but you know, my son and I were talking this week, my middle one, and he said, I don't want to give Oprah Winfrey credit because she wasn't the originator, but she's so right. She says 3 bites. Just do 3 bites. It will satisfy you if you chew them slowly and do it. And he's so right. I was so hungry the other morning, but I know a banana and peanut butter will cut that hunger so big. And my son was standing by me, and he said, take the whole banana. I said, no, that's too much. It's just too much. And I cut a little piece and did it. He said, well, you know, Oprah Winfrey says 3 bites. And that's about what I wanted. Anything more was just going to feel kind of
skip
full.
the banana and just eat the peanut butter.
Yeah, you can do that too. Yeah.
Peanut butter's got a lot of sugar in it, some of it though.
Yeah,
Well, I
some
don't
of
want
them
the
do.
whole jar. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like to kind of like,
Just
like
a
you're
spoonful.
saying, to kind of get you past.
Yeah.
I do 2, well, I actually follow the guidelines. I do 2 tablespoons is considered a serving. So I
And
do
I'm
2
wondering,
tablespoons.
is 2 tablespoons a carb serving? And no,
Right.
because it's more protein.
I just
It's
do
fat
2.
and protein.
It's
No,
got
I-
the
yeah.
fiber in
Yeah.
it counts.
So I just
And
do
if it's
what
got
they consider the serving
sugar,
size, which
that's
is
the
2.
trouble. What Connie's saying, if they've done sugar in it. So you want some of those naturals.
When I was a cancer patient, I did a very strict keto diet. And so I only ate 50 grams of carbs a day. So peanut butter was not
So-
on my list, I couldn't eat it.
Mm.
2 tablespoons blew my day.
Yeah, I've heard of the keto diet and tried it.
And that's you were on
Ugh.
50, so 15, 15, 15, 15
That's
is
hard to
48.
follow, that diet.
So you just
But
got
once
4
you
carbs.
withdraw from everything else, it's
Mhm.
so easy to follow. 'Cause
For
you're
health
never
reasons,
hungry.
I would,
You're just
I would
you're
so do
never
it, but
hungry. Like you could literally forget to eat because you're never hungry.
Drawn back from the carbs.
Uh-huh.
See, that's what I've heard. And the dietitian, I was talking to her, and she said, this friend of mine, not friend, I mean, Metro supplies dietitians to Metro teachers, and my husband was a Metro teacher. So I've gotten to know her good advice, and she said, just keep in mind, the body gets used to something, and it thinks it's hungry and wants sugar. I've got to have some sugar. But it's because it's used to it, and
the
it's
peak
worked
and
for
trough.
you. But she said, if you will throw it, and she's big into intermittent fasting, where when you finish supper, don't do it again until 18 hours later, and then eat everything in 8 hours.
Yeah, that's why it's called break fast.
Mhm.
It's breakfast, it's break your
18
fast.
hours or
I
8
did,
hours?
Huh?
Did you say 18 or 8 hours?
8.
18.
Oh.
18
is
fast, and then
Oh.
eat for 8.
Yeah, it's 12 to 18.
so in a 24 hour
Yeah, 12 to
period,
18.
But I read something interesting about bananas because,
But you can
of
count
course,
right.
I can't have bananas or not normally. And I was reading if you gotta eat them at the right time, and how many of us can get
Yeah.
the right bananas?
Yeah.
Like just right at the green, about to turn yellow, that's the best time for diabetics because it doesn't have so much sugar. But they still don't recommend if diabetics eating them.
I understand when you're diabetic and you follow a certain strict diet, but I'm almost like, go back. I've always maintained my weight by doing, and I gained 20 pounds, and I've never done that before until the last 2 years. Now I've lost it. But I was eating a ton of sugar. I've never craved sugar, but I was eating sweets all the time. But other than that, and then I did the same thing to lose it, I believe in the good old fashioned, eat your pyramid thing. It's all based on not too much of this,
Yeah.
not too much of that.
Without overdoing
But, I
it.
do understand it's different if you have
Oh, yeah.
a disease.
And you know, bananas,
Like, right, that's what I'm saying.
but
If
you know,
you're
you're
a
right,
diabetic
Lori.
or cancer.
The
and
banana's sweeter
need a
as
certain
it gets
Right.
more ripe.
And that's what they were saying at that point, when the banana's green and just turning out.
Uh-huh.
Who would study bananas but
Yeah,
me?
yeah.
But anyway.
No, I've read all kinds of stuff like that.
I love bananas.
And when you can eat. And,
But the fiber amount
Yeah.
in the banana at that point outweighs the sugar
Yeah.
because it doesn't have as much.
So
oxygen.
on your label of your whatever you're going to eat, go straight to total carbs. And let's say they're 15. Then drop your eyes down to fiber. And if it has 2 or 3 fiber, subtract that from the 17 and you've got 14. So it now has become 1 carb serving. Now be sure and go to the top. So those are my 3 things. I do like to glance at sugar in them. But go to the top and see how many servings are in that, because the serving tells you at the top, but the bottom part is for one serving. It's not for the whole package. The package may have 2 servings. Now, if it's just 1 serving in it, that is true. But if it's 2 servings, you have to know that the numbers are for 1 serving. You follow what I kind of crazy said it, but that's what it means. So subtract your fiber from it. My friend that's got his doctorate in nurse practice, this diabetic teacher, he calls grapes nature's trash, nature's junk food, because he says it's just sugar with a little jacket around it. But somebody said, I just really disagree with that. I think grapes,
I love grapes.
but you know,
Especially
15,
the red ones.
15 is a carb serving. And fine, if you want it, but it's 1 carb. And it's been interesting to me to see foods, because I think a little sweetness at the end of a meal satisfies you. You don't the rest of the night hunt for something in the kitchen if you've had just a little sweet. But you don't want much, Oprah Winfrey, and her 3 bites. But I've looked at ice cream on a stick, and there are some of those that are just, now I saw some at Kroger's this week, fudgesicle, no added sugar, and I looked at it, and it was about 9 for one of them, and of course no fiber in it, and it didn't have much sugar either. You know, it's mostly water with a little
Have
something.
you tried Halo?
Yeah, Halo's good for, I mean, it's low everything. Halo.
You need a whole pint of Halo ice cream for what? You can get a half a cup of Baskin Robbins
Yeah,
or something.
yeah. So, carb counting, and realize you can have vegetables, but now you have to watch the starch vegetables because they're carbs. The potatoes are pretty rough. Sweet potatoes, they say, are decent. But the white, anything white bread, dietitians would prefer you didn't have any bread, but if you're going to, a good healthy bread that has a lot of fiber that you can subtract.
But what do you think about how the advice changes constantly?
Yeah, well, you just
You
have
know,
to.
it's like,
Yeah, and it's kind of what you said, balance. And you know what?
and that's why I believe in balance.
You have to check your blood sugar. Everybody is different. I can eat sweet potatoes, somebody else. I cannot eat bananas. I mean, you want to see blood sugar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody reacts
And
differently.
if
Right.
we would get patients, but who wants to stick their finger 6 times?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've done it because I wanted to know what foods exactly
could.
do stuff
Yeah.
to me. And if you could get your patients to do that, you would find out I cannot have but 1 slice of sprouted bread a day. And then the rest of the time I don't need any carbs. And that's bad. I mean but I can't have it. I mean, I check oatmeal's good for you. It's not good for me.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's what I think the new teaching needs to be, is you need to tell your diabetic patients,
Right.
just check your blood sugars after you eat these things,
Yeah.
and you will find the foods you can eat.
But yeah,
Right.
just like medicines affect so many
Yeah,
people differently,
differently.
so that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
not
just the biggest thing is not just randomly surf eat. And I was telling the few when they were here this morning at 1 o'clock that we went to the floor. I just came from Centennial and I supervised this morning over there. And nurses are big surf eaters. And I'd make rounds and Lydia, we got these donut holes. Well, you know, all it takes, just take one. They're good. I'm just going to have one because I'm going. And because I'm so conscious of it, I'm not always, but I'm on a kick right now of trying to be conscious just because I'm trying to help my husband. And I feel like if I can do it too. And so I've said no to it, but I've noticed, Connie, it's not even interesting to me, sweets, once you.
Have y'all ever
Yeah,
heard of Eat
once
for
you
Your
go back.
Blood Type? Have y'all read those books?
The what?
Eat for Your Blood Type?
Oh, no,
It's a whole line of books. They've been on the market maybe since the 70s, but it's not mainstream medicine. It's more of a holistic type medicine. But like I'm O positive, and some things I should never have is
Oh.
coffee. Because it changes the acidity of my blood, and that's like a hard one for me to do without. After years of being a nurse, you live on coffee, but different things. So I just wondered if you'd researched that.
I did, I looked into that, it didn't apply to me.
Okay, didn't
Which
help
was,
you.
I mean, it didn't, you know, but it does a lot of people.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's
so
interesting,
What did
on
you
blood
say?
types.
Eat for your blood type. And you can buy a book that's like, if you know your type, that's specific, and it'll list the foods. Never eat, occasionally eat, always eat.
Oh, yeah.
That's the way the lists
That's
are.
Which it sounded similar
Now-
to you saying you tested your.
Yes.
So keep in mind a few things. Watching your carbs, 15. If it says one serving is 30, you've just done 2 carbs. And that's fine. If you're going to have a little dessert that's 1 carb, then you don't need. And so watch carbs. If you're a woman, we ought to keep it at about 2, 2, 2 with 1 snack each.
So you're saying 2 with each meal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
And-
if your blood sugars are healthy.
Right.
Yeah. And then, but now we've talked about the H1AC, that the red blood cell, we're going to get into hematology, red blood cell collects sugar and it dies in 4 months or 120 days. And it's just the good Lord made it sticky and it takes sugar on. And so when we draw blood for an H1C, then it shows how much sugar proportionally, and it calls for 12, 8. We want a 6. Used to 7 was good. Now they dropped it to 6, and now you're saying they love 5. And what? Don't even ask. Is it millimeter? Da 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 da. Just the number is all you do. What we're, I think people know that you're either hypo or hyper, and I quit years ago trying to say, now let's see, if you're got hyper, this is what it looks. You just know this isn't right. I don't feel right. And what do they say? The little term is high and dry. And my students taught it to me. I never learned it, so I'm not good at it, but I'm going to tell it to you. Let's see. Y'all don't know it either. I can tell. The little, it's a,
Hot and dry, sugar is high. Cold and clammy, give them candy.
yeah, where'd you get it?
I watched your video.
Is it on there, on the hematology or what, Stacy?
Yeah, and endocrinology.
Uh-huh. Hot and, say it again, because I never learned it.
Hot and dry, sugar is high.
Cold and
Cold and clammy.
Cold and clammy,
Needs
give
a
them
candy.
candy.
Yeah. Thank you, Stacy.
I like that.
Oh, well, it's a good way to remember. Mostly, if you even feel a little peculiar, put the sugar to you. Because, remember, our brain cells can handle all the sugar, and we may go in a coma, but it's not going to hurt them. Where we know that if it's insulin and no sugar, they'll die. Our brain cells, never to replenish, and gone. So, if I had my choice, I'll be hyperglycemic and not hypoglycemic. So, anybody that's diabetic that says they feel funny, you give them sugar.
You know,
And
a minute ago when you mentioned that you get used to things, my dad is a stubborn diabetic, and he eats everything I don't. But if his blood sugar drops below 115, he feels hypoglycemic.
Wow.
And it's because his blood sugar's way
Yes.
up here all the time, and he eats all
Oh, yeah.
So
We're
it's
used to it.
interesting when you said that the body, you
Yes.
just get used to it,
That's-
and that's why his blood sugar then, because he gets, I mean, it's 115, and he's going for the orange juice.
And you know, the 3 bite theory, and it isn't original with Oprah Winfrey, but she brought it out, and you eat a wonderful dessert. 3 bites is about all if you savor it. Eat it slow. Eat it slow. Or first off, just ask for that small, and then just be slow. Now, when you get through, you want more, but and I've noticed that discipline is the biggest thing to stop, because it's rare that I eat something that I don't want more. And I don't need more. And I just have to wait. A cup of tea works great. To stop brushing your teeth works great. Or just stop and get involved in something. Start reading, or start filling out papers or something.
Because the waiting 15 minutes, have you heard of
Yeah,
that
15 or
really
20.
does help you out.
Yes.
Then all of a sudden
15 or
you're
20 minutes.
Craigie's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah. Now, so what are we doing in the hospital when we have a diabetic who is lightheaded or said they are? We'll of course do the blood sugar and do the blood sugar, and you can, as soon as you do it, give them a little something. What are we giving for hypoglycemia? And it's varied. Do you remember years ago we did orange juice with 2 sugars? Then we went to milk. And now we're just to juice without sugar. They said it was too big a rebound. So right now, if you're out in the public, who cares? Just get a little sugar in your people and see what happens.
You know, this is about peds. This is different. I still am in schools a lot with kids, but most of the school nurses will say that if the kids in the elementary schools didn't eat so much sugar, they wouldn't have an ADHD problem.
See, I bet you're right.
They say that there's a definite correlation between what the kids are eating and the hyperactivity of their mind and their body.
I had a doctor who did it, I don't know why she told me, she was the first one that found out what I had. And she was telling me about her daughter. She went to eat, she kept wondering why her daughter came home wild as a bug.
Yeah.
She was like, she was just like somebody invaded her.
Like heathens.
And so she said, she went and she started eating lunch with her. She saw what they had for lunch, and she's like, okay, you're going to have to take some chicken or a hamburger patty or something. And she said when her daughter got home, when she made her take that extra for lunch, she was not like that.
Oh, see?
Miss Obama changed that.
And something I was going to say. Yeah, you know, Metro gives breakfast, and my husband helps with breakfast at one of the schools. And I say, what are y'all doing? Well, it's pastries, juice and milk, but juice is loaded with sugar.
Right.
Milk's okay, but he said they don't drink it.
And some of the meat, I'm not sure is meat.
Yeah, I know it.
It's that old processed stuff.
Now, on the back of your card, or if you don't have your card with you, go to your agenda, and I think that's where, if you have your card that has the insulins on it, the agenda has it in toward the back, I think. Page 36. And if you look, Novolog has other names. It's the Rapid. Novolog, Aspart, Humalog, and Iperidoc. They start an onset in 5 to 15 minutes. Can you find it? It's in 36 in agenda. Or your card. That in 36, is it, Lori?
Yes,
Right down here. At the bottom. And so it's going to start in 5 minutes. And that's what you want to count on. Our rule in the hospital is you don't dare give Novolog or Humalog or Lispro. Never give them unless the tray's in front of them. Because we don't want them to go into hypoglycemia and kill their brain cells. And it peaks in about an hour. Your card may have it a little different. And duration, 2 to 4. I always remember 5 to 15 minutes, 1 hour, and it's over. Actually, I usually think of 2 hours it peaks and 4 hours it's over. Then the regular insulins have the R, and they usually start in 30 minutes. And regular usually goes 8 hours. I think that's odd. What does your card say?
6 to 10.
6 to 10. This piece of paper doesn't have it that way, but it has 4 hours duration.
This says 6 to 10.
Yeah, I think they're mostly, what does that say?
It says 8, this card says 8.
Yeah, 8 is more like it for regular, and peaks in about 4. Regular insulins peak in 4, last 8. And of course,
This says peaks 2.5.
yeah.
Duration 6 to 10 on the card, but the NPH says 4 to 8.
Now, on NPH, so I just have learned it, what I just said, 5 minutes on those fast ones, 2 they peak, 4 they're over. Regular, 30 minutes start, 4 they peak, 8 they duration. NPH, 1.5 to 2 hours to start, peaks in 12, over in 24. And then you've got, now the one they use a lot is Lantus and Levemir, and they are very similar. They don't peak. You see that? They take about 2 hours to get to their level, and then they stay there 24. They use a lot of Lantus and Levemir, and they're 24. And then some combinations, you see 70-30 is some NPH and some regular. So they start working whenever whichever is in there starts working. So the biggest thing, you don't just get, my thing I have to emphasize with students, generic students, it's just not a task. Given a shot, you got that. Sub-Q injection, give it any place you can pull skin up, not muscle, because we don't want it intermuscular. We want it slow, and sub-Q is going to be slower. They say 3 inches above the elbow is good. Pinch. I always think sub-Q is good pinched because it is sub-Q then, it's not muscle. They don't usually pick up a muscle. And this isn't good. The scapular's great back here because you can always pull up. A lot of people aren't muscular there, some are.
I've never been taught that.
Scapula.
Yeah. I mean, not yeah, that's scapula, isn't it? Yeah. And yeah. And of course, elderly people, they've got a lot of sub-Q. You can find some sub-Q. Just remember, you're trying to make it. The reason I do like to pull up is to make it sub-Q and not into muscle. The needle isn't very long, but it could go into muscle. It just makes it go faster. I like sub-Q is what it's supposed to be. The thing that's so scary is to make sure they've got food in front of them if you give the fast ones. And then you make sure their food comes within that, you gave them regular, that it's there in 30 minutes. Now, if they had a 500 blood sugar, we are probably okay, but you don't want to forget because they're not going to go into hypo that quickly. In the old days, when they made insulin out of the pancreas of sheep and hogs, and was it goats? And I don't think we're doing it now. We're making it all in the labs, human-like, human. And so it's mostly synthetic, but it looks just like human, and it's acting like human insulin, which is a wonderful thing because we're not building up antibodies. See, when we were using hog and cows and stuff, as soon as somebody got it, the body rushed and started making antibodies because it's foreign. And that's the reason we got knots. And we were told we needed to rotate because as we got knots, it wouldn't absorb as good. So you needed to always rotate. Well, they don't say we have to rotate so much now. But what they do say, and this is a study I was told it was done at Vanderbilt, is the body does love sameness. And that's to a fault. If you love leisure all the time, then the body loves to stay leisure. The body rarely likes uncomfortable, so you need to get out of uncomfortable zone. But it's real trainable, just like we said, how trainable it is. It loves to do the same thing, and you gave me a lot of sugar, I won't steal that. Well, the same is true with injections. They say, do you do injections, Lori?
No.
Okay. They say, Vanderbilt figured out this study, for a month's worth of injections, go an inch from the umbilicus on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday. For Saturday, 1 week you stayed within an inch. Next week, 2 inches. Next week, 3 inches, 4 inches, and then start back the next month here. And they said, first off, you don't build antibodies because it's not foreign, it's human-like. But the other part is they said the body loves to keep the same pattern, and it doesn't like to jump around. Okay, you gave it here tomorrow, there. And they think it's controlled better if it's coming from the same kind of area. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And it's good, something good to tell diabetics. On the finger stick, you know, I may have already told you, the urine, when I first nursed, we didn't stick. And it was just urine. And now they say the blood is, that drop of blood that you just ran a blood sugar on would have been 2 hours before it was in your urine. The same sugar, the sugar you got here would take 2 hours to be in your urine. So it's the here and now, which is really good. We've come a long way with the insulins, well, the diabetes, but not enough, if you ask me. The pumps are probably the newest thing, and they tell me now, I hadn't seen it, that you can put the needle sub-Q and it can push the button and the blood sugar will come up, and it can be programmed for whatever blood sugar you've programmed to how much insulin the pump will deliver. It hasn't caught the world by a huge admiration. People who love it, love it. And I don't know. I mean, they have to change them often, but a shot's kind of cumbersome too. So the most progress, I think, are in the pump and some of these drugs that they're using. But I'm not supporting the drugs because I'd like for our diet to really do it. We really don't know what all these drugs are going to do when their people are 90-something years old. Or,
If they live that long.
uh-huh. Mm-hmm. And so, and as you know, the absolute worst thing for diabetics is their vascular system. And I may have told you in nursing school 50 years ago, I remember so well a teacher saying, and I didn't even think my school was that good, but I remember this. They said, we won't promise you that you'll die of cancer if you smoke, but we'll promise you one thing: you will have vascular problems if you smoke. If you have diabetes, you're going to have vascular problems. Smoking, that's one of the biggest. Forget the lungs. Those tars are horrible on the vascular system. And our vascular system is pretty tolerant, but it can handle just so much. And I have a friend that went to her ophthalmologist, great health, and she saw it regular every year, and he said, Vicki, when he was through, how long have you had diabetes? And she said, I don't have it. He said, yeah, you do. And he just, from looking at her vessels, her optic disc, and it's bulbous. It's or inflamed, I should say. It's probably bulbous because it's inflamed. And remember I told you it's like glass. I saw the dietitian this week, and I told her, I said, I quote you all the time about your glass particles being sugar, scraping the vessels makes them inflamed. And so I was with a patient the other day and going to have cataract surgery, and the doctor said, your diabetes has not affected your vision, but it's going to. And I said, why do you say that? And she said, because of the vessels, I can tell they're ready to, they're just ripe for hemorrhaging and whatever. And they're holding on now, but that's what's so awful, this So the vascular system is such a big deal with diabetes. We already know about the, so rotating sites, not so much.
So you said go around 1 inch and then 2 inches and then go back to 1 inch, or you go out
3 for
Go out
third
to-
week, fourth week, 4
So
inches.
it's a 4-week rotation.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I could, the PO meds, I just almost hate to talk about them because I just hate them, but I hate to talk about them, but they're out there and they are working, they do keep blood sugar low, but I don't know what harm they're doing in it. But now, if they're just putting out a GI hormone, I like that. But if we're trying to work with, let's see, trying to work with the pancreas and push in, it's almost like it isn't natural. But I don't know what to say. You know some of the most famous metformin. Janumet is a mixture of a couple of them. Janumet is metformin and Januvia. Now Januvia does have the GI hormone. Januvia, like J-U-N, Januvia, has the GI hormone. And then Janumet is metformin and Januvia. Oh, when I fly through any data that's on the internet, they just crucify metformin. And I don't know why. Sometimes I quit reading because everything sounds bad.
Well, now, I take metformin.
What do you think?
If you take the extended release, it's much easier on your system. The other causes GI distress.
Okay.
And relief.
And that may be what
It's awful.
you think the extended release
Yes, and
is.
I've been on it for some time. I don't notice any side effects from it.
Good.
That's the only one my doctor will put me on because she does not like any of them.
Okay, well, I'm glad to know that.
Yeah.
That gives us an idea of the extended release. That's good.
Because I was taking the other and I told her, I said, well, I won't take this if it's gonna do this because I can't leave, I couldn't go walking.
Oh, yeah.
You know, she told me to walk and I'm like, I can't go out the door.
The GI.
And so she said, well, let's try this. I said, yes, it'll make your stomach just cramp and
Oh.
then it can cause excessive diarrhea.
Oh,
So then
come
that
on.
can get you in a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't go anywhere. You gotta just,
Right,
Well,
so
the
the
extended,
extended release
that's a
is
good
much
point,
better.
good point. I think I need to write that
Does the
down.
drug now have to be on a trial basis before it can be an over-the-counter treatment, like a metformin? It used to be 25 years, but I know it's not that anymore.
And I think that's
So-
money under the table, just cut that down, so
It's cut that
probably.
down, but you don't know how long either.
I don't. Now, I'm not quite through. Do y'all need a little tiny break?
I can wait a few minutes if you.
Are y'all okay? Let's go then a few more minutes. Has anybody watched Glory for Everyone? It's that one of the names of the movie I gave you. And you don't have to, I mean, where can you find it? Somebody told me, I don't know if it's Netflix or someplace, but sometime after the course you may want Glory for
Netflix.
Everyone. But it is worth seeing because of your appreciation of this illness, if you don't already have an appreciation for it, and the discovery of insulin. If trivia, I've always remembered Banting and Best. Did y'all learn that? Banting and Best, the two men that discovered insulin. But the story is on that film. But I already knew the story because I was at Green Hills Library one day and sitting out on the table was Sir Frederick Banting. And I thought, well, I knew Banting. I knew he discovered insulin. So I checked it out and read the story. It was him. He was knighted. And then the movie I saw later, which is, goes along with the book, and it's really good. And that's why I think you might want to see it. It would be something you'd want to do, just relaxed. It's not something where you'll probably want to take notes. But I think it puts us in a frame of mind of what it was like when there wasn't a cure for tuberculosis. It was a lot like that, TB. They had sanitariums, and they had sanitariums for TB, where you went if you had TB, and they had it for diabetics, and usually the wealthy were the only ones that went for diabetes. I don't know about TB, but the diabetics, you had to have pretty much money. And we had a vice president under Calvin Coolidge, I think his name was Hughes, who had a daughter who, well, he was very wealthy. The vice president was. He had a home in the Hamptons and a home in Bermuda, and he had an apartment in Washington. And he had 2 daughters, and one of them was coming down with diabetes, or she did have diabetes. And so the only thing to do was send her to the sanitarium, because, you know, death was what happened. They just waste away. So he sent her to the sanitarium, and that's an experience in itself. In the movie, they show you bright people run it who know that carbs turn to sugar. Exercise will only take care of a little of getting the sugar in. The shovel, insulin that you don't have to do it, exercise will push a little, but not enough to keep you living a long life. It'll do a little. And they knew all that. They knew what foods. It's pretty remarkable. And this is in the earlier, the teens of 1900, 1914, 15, those times. Because insulin was discovered in 21. And so she went, this Hughes' daughter, went to the sanitarium and just kept losing weight, as they do, because if your body starts digesting your muscles, it needs some energy, and that fat and muscles it starts using. So she kept losing. And the parents had enough money to hire one of the good nurses from the sanitarium and let her send them both, the nurse and the daughter, to Bermuda, to their home in Bermuda. Nobody knows what to do. Let's just try fresh air and no stress. And stress, we know, will get blood sugar, so they probably knew that. And so they send the nurse and the daughter. They go see her. I mean, it's not like they close this door. But now the nurse is concentrated on the right eating and exercising. She's just going down. And finally the nurse wrote him and said she's dying and want to send her home. She wants to die at home. So they brought her home and took her to the sanitarium. And about that time, they'd heard there was an extract out of Canada that helped blood sugar. And the mother said, the vice president's wife said, asked the sanitarium head, could we get that extract? And he said, no, I can't. I have no weight like that. He's a Canadian, and I can give you a letter of introduction. You can go. And she said she would. So she went to Canada and to try to pursue the source of the extract. Now, to put that on the back burner, Frederick Banting was from rural Canada, and he went to medical school, and he was poor, and he went to medical school and went to World War I, so that's 1918. Worked in a surgery clinic, a MASH, couldn't stand it. Came back to Canada and had thick glasses and a stutter, not overly attractive physically or personality-wise, but he wanted to have a practice in one of the cities rather than rural Canada. But he didn't do any good. He took in $4 the first month, I think. And so he thought, I need a part-time job. So he got a job at the university, the medical school, and they gave him the worst lecture nobody wanted, which was diabetes, because they hadn't learned anything since mummies until 1898. A German discovered the pancreas was the culprit. That's all he knew. He just knew the pancreas taken out caused your blood sugar to go up. And that was 1898, this is 1920. So that's all the news. So they gave him the lecture, of course. Nobody wanted it. So he asked the dean if he could have some Bunsen burners and some dogs and assistant to help him. And the dean said, listen, let me just tell you, we got sanitariums all over the world working on this project. And it's an attic. I could give you an attic room, but it's not going to work. I mean, they are prime institutions that have. And he said, well, would you try? And he gave him some dogs, and no medical student wanted to help him. But finally, 2 split the semester, and one of the medical students was Best. And the other medical student we don't hear of because Best didn't leave him during the project. So they worked, and it's so fascinating what they tried to do. They knew it was the pancreas, so they cut off the blood supply. Yes, they got pancreas. But they realized there is a part that bubbles on there. And so they extracted that bubbling, and that's, of course, insulin, and ended up they took the pancreas and freeze-dried it and ground it up and put it in a solvent and they tried everything. But they finally aspirated from those bubbles and put it in a dog that was hyperglycemic and went to lunch. And when they came back, the dog was running around. They knew they were onto something. But now, will a human handle a sheep? Because their insulin was from slaughterhouses, pancreases of sheep and goats and hogs, and we don't know if humans can stand it. So, and how much? Is it going to take this much every day, or what? And so they tried, they weren't coming up with anything. And the head of the medical school came to another medical student came in one day and said, they even tried a patient at the hospital and his blood sugar didn't budge. Well, this medical student who was going to do the second half of the semester came in very arrogant, and he said, I need to tell you all that the dean gave me the formula on the extract, or I use the extract, and as we speak, I've just put a injection in a patient, and his blood sugar is down, and I wanted to tell you. Well, it just threw these Banting and Best because they came up with it, and this fella's going to get the glory. And they were sick about it, but they tried to be altruistic and say, it's for mankind. But Alistair Cook's movie says the biochemist, the medical student, broke the cardinal rule of biochemistry. He didn't write down every step, so he couldn't repeat it. And so now they're both at the same level and feel, and Banting and Best came out with the right formula, the right everything. So Banting and Best are seeing patients in Canada, and that's who the vice president's wife had heard about. So she had her letter of introduction, went to Dr. Banting, and met with him, and I'm sure only because she was the vice president's wife, she even got an audience with him. And she told him about her daughter, and he said, she didn't take her daughter, but Dr. Banting said, I can't show favoritism because, at night, Banting and Best and friends would go to slaughterhouses and go through the stuff and find a pancreas and bring it. They were living day to day, pulling the extract out. Of course, drug companies are not quite won over yet. And he told the wife, he said, if I show favoritism, people will say it's your money and your prestige. And he said, some people have walked 4 miles to see me this morning. The line would be long. And she said, Dr. Banting, my daughter can't even walk. She was 40 pounds and in the fetal position. And so something broke his heart, and he decided to take her on, the daughter. And the movie says Margaret Hughes died at the age of 70 suddenly, And I think that's important. It didn't say lasted in a nursing home the last 10 years of her life, double amputee. Didn't say that. It said Margaret Hughes died at the age of 74, and it was decided very suddenly that she received 44,000 shots of insulin. And that was crude. That wasn't our high and mighty insulins we have now. There's a recent book out called Breakthrough Elizabeth Hughes. Breakthrough Elizabeth Hughes, The Discovery of Insulin and the Miracle and the Making of a Medical Miracle. Breakthrough Elizabeth Hughes. And Dr. Banting went on, so they notified him that Stockholm, Sweden wanted to give him a Nobel Prize, but they wanted him to share it with the dean. That's what he thought. He said, forget it. I'm not coming. I don't want it. And Canada begged him to, because Canada doesn't have many Nobel Prizes and none in medicine. And they begged him to do it, and he said, okay, I'll do it. I'm not going to Stockholm to get the award. I will take half of it. So it was a $40,000, 1921. The Nobel Prize was $40,000. And Dean MacLeod went over in all his glory and got the award, and Banting got 20. He didn't go, but he gave 10 to Best. And then he went on and was very active as a doctor until World War II, and he was knighted by the Queen. And in World War II, some people say, and I don't agree, that his breakthroughs in anaerobic and aerobic medicine have been more of a contribution than his discovery of insulin. I think that's hard to know. I don't know anything about anaerobic and aerobic medicine, but he did do quite breakthroughs with that and was killed in an airplane crash in World War II. But a real remarkable when you think what he found out when fancy labs everywhere. It's amazing. So I'm saying you and I can come up with something too on this insulin business if Dr. Banting and Bess could do it too.
We just need some candidates to practice.
Yeah, dogs. All right, take a little break and then we'll.